Not a single word was spoken to Tala as she passed the sari-sari store, but the low whispers passing between the old men followed her like the dust kicked up by the dry April wind. Tala has finally lost her mind. Grief for her papa has broken her, muttered Mung Tatai. He spat into the dust, his eyes hardening. First, she refuses the chemical sacks, and now she carries the sea to the mountain. She will poison the last good soil her father gave his life to protect. What a tragic disappointment to her papa's legacy. The El Niño of 2026 had turned the province into a furnace. The soil of Barangay Alon was exhausted, white with the crust of decades of synthetic fertilizers, dead to the microorganisms that once made the valley thrive. Her neighbors were borrowing more money from the local merchants just to buy heavier loads of chemical nitrates, burying themselves in debt for a harvest that grew smaller every year. Tala's father had died defending this land from the banks. Her mother's joints were too swollen to work. The burden was hers alone, and the farm was slowly failing. But 3 weeks ago, at the absolute bottom of a rotting wooden trunk, buried beneath moth-eaten barongs and yellowed land titles, her fingers had brushed against a hidden treasure, something far more valuable than gold. It was a water-damaged, leather-bound journal from the 1970s. Its ink fading, but its truth absolute. Leafing through pages stained by time, Tala's eyes locked onto a handwritten passage that defied everything she had ever been taught about farming. It spoke of a forgotten biological secret, a specific, precise master ratio that could unlock the 92 elemental minerals of the ocean and heal the earth. The journal called it the ratio of Genesis. If she got the numbers right, it would turn a known plant poison into a miraculous medicine. If she got them wrong, she would instantly destroy her father's legacy. She didn't dare do it during the day. The judgment of the barangay was a suffocating thing, and if the local council caught her treating her crops with raw ocean water, they would condemn her plot as a reckless liability to the surrounding valleys. But let them whisper. Tala knew what they didn't. At 3 a.m., under a pitch-black, moonless sky, Tala knelt in the middle of her dying vegetable patch. Her flashlight illuminated a clean, 5-gallon plastic drum of fresh well water. Her hands were tense, not with fear, but with a fierce, electric adrenaline as she removed the lid from the bottle of raw seawater she had hauled up the steep cliffs from the rocky shore. Holding a small plastic measuring cup, she took a deep, steadying breath, her heart racing with anticipation. This wasn't a blind guess. It was a proven historic science that had simply been buried and forgotten. She just had to execute the dilution correctly. A lazy, heavy... She poured the ocean water into the fresh well water, watching the two liquids blend inside the drum, clear and unremarkable. To anyone else peering through the dark, it would look like sheer madness, watering a dying farm with the very thing known to kill it. To Tala, it was the beginning of reviving her farmland and honoring her father's legacy. As she lifted the heavy backpack sprayer, strapping it tightly across her shoulders, she felt a renewed hope and a thrilling certainty of what was to come. She engaged the hand pump. A fine, misty fog hissed from the nozzle, settling softly over the dull, yellowing leaves of her heirloom tomatoes and the stunted, fibrous stalks of her moringa. The faint scent of brine hung in the cool morning air, clashing with the dusty, dead smell of the scorched valley. The first breath of a sleeping giant waking up. By mid-May, the heat wave had reached a merciless 42 degrees Celsius. Across the dirt road, Mung Tatai's crop was burning up, turning to ash despite the expensive chemical drips he had gone deep into debt to afford. But Tala's plot was doing something terrifying. It was turning a deep, rich, almost unnatural emerald green. The leaves of her tomatoes weren't curling under the punishing midday sun. They grew thick, waxy, and stood erect like solar panels. The moringa stalks had doubled in thickness, their branches heavy with vibrant, nutrient-dense green lace.
One evening, a heavy shadow fell across her fence. It was the barangay captain, flanked by 3 stone-faced elders. "Tala," the captain said, his voice heavy with the rigid authority of rural law. "The neighbors are complaining. They say you are using seawater on your soil. They say you are bringing the salt of the sea up here, and that when the rains finally come, the toxic runoff will sterilize every field below you. We are ordering you to stop."
"It's not salt, Captain," Tala said, standing her ground, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "It's dilution. The sea has exactly what our land was robbed of. Look at the leaves. They aren't dying." "The sea kills crops, child. It is common sense," Mangtatai shouted, stepping forward, his calloused finger trembling as he pointed at her green paradise. "You defy the ancestors. You defy the science of the shops. If our crops fail because your salt leaks into our water table, we will drive your family out of Alon." They gave her a cold ultimatum. Stop this saltwater nonsense immediately, or face a community-enforced backlash and a total ban on selling her produce at the city market. Tala sat on her porch that night, weeping in the dark. The isolation was a heavy, physical ache. It would be so easy to yield, to buy the chemical bags, to sink into the comfortable, collective ruin of her neighbors. Desperate, she walked out into the rows of her crops. She pulled a single tomato from the vine. It was heavy, dense, and smelled of real, unadulterated. The Escalante city market was loud and chaotic, the heavy smells of the wet market and diesel exhaust hitting you straight in the face. Tala stood behind a small wooden crate at the very edge of the market, isolated from the other vendors of Barangay Alon. Her produce looked like it belonged in a museum. Her tomatoes were deep ruby red, bursting with juices and heavy as stones. Her moringa leaves were crisp and vibrant. The people of her barangay watched from a distance, whispering, actively warning buyers away from the poisoned salt crop. All day she stood patient, yet no one bought a single piece. Tala's heart sank into her stomach. The weight of defeat pressed down on her chest. If she couldn't sell this, the farm would be foreclosed by the bank by the end of the month. Then an elderly woman stopped. It was Lola Elena, the oldest, most respected midwife in the district, known for her sharp tongue and impeccable taste. She came along just as Tala was about to pack her things up and head home.
"What is this?" Lola Elena asked, touching a heavy tomato. "They don't look like the plastic things from the commercial farms." "It is grown with the memory of the sea, Lola," Tala said softly, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "Try it, please." Lola Elena drew a small knife from her bag, sliced a piece of the purple-red tomato, and put it in her mouth. The entire corner of the market went dead silent. Mangtatai watched from across the aisle, a smug smile forming on his lips, waiting for the old woman to spit it out. Lola Elena chewed slowly. Her eyes suddenly widened. She stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, her weathered face softening into an expression of pure, nostalgic wonder. "This," Lola Elena whispered, her voice carrying through the quiet crowd. "This tastes like the valley 60 years ago, before the machines, before the poison. It tastes like life." She looked up at Tala.
The next day, Tala woke as she did every day. Word had been quietly spreading, as all things do in a community of people who think they know best. They all wanted to know the same thing, if they could get some tomatoes and moringa offer. Chefs from the local restaurants, mothers looking for real nutrients for their children, and curious onlookers came looking, money in hand. In less than 1 hour, every single leaf and fruit was sold at triple the price of the chemical-grown crops. Tala's pockets were now heavy with coins and bills, her face wet with tears of relief. When she returned to Barangay Alon that evening, the dust on the road felt different. The sun was setting over the Visayan Sea, painting the sky in streaks of gold and violet. As she walked past the sari-sari store, Mang Tatai was standing by the road. He didn't look away this time. He looked down at his own withered...
He didn't speak. He couldn't. But as Tala walked past, he fell into step behind her, keeping his eyes on the ground. Then came another neighbor, and another. By the time Tala reached her front gate, half the elders of the barangay were standing outside, looking out at the vast blue ocean that they had spent their whole lives fearing, not realizing it was the very thing meant to save them. Tala smiled, wiped her eyes, and opened the notebook on the wooden porch table. The neighborhood crowded around her in total silence, waiting for the revelation.
To save the land, Tala said, pointing to the fading ink on the fragile page, you must use the exact ratio of Genesis once every 3 weeks. For every 1 gallon of fresh water, you must add exactly 4.25 fluid ounces of raw seawater, a perfect, unyielding dilution of 1 part ocean to 30 parts fresh water.